on Arirang News. The latest UN Security Council meeting on North Korea's recent ballistic missile launch ends without a concrete conclusion, amid opposition from China and Russia. But the international community, including South Korea and 9 UNSC members, remain critical. South Korea's ruling and opposition parties end a long tussle over next year's budget and finally reach a deal. More funds will be set aside for the nation's R&D projects. Israel says it's ready to offer a one-week pause of its fighting in Gaza in exchange for 40 hostages. Intensive talks are reportedly underway for what would be a second cruise since the war began. Good evening, it's 9 p.m. here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us on Arirang News. We begin with a joint condemnation by South Korea and 9 UNSC members of North Korea's latest ICBM launch. In the meantime, the latest UN Security Council meeting ended without a conclusion amid opposition from China and Russia. Our defense correspondent Choi Min-jung starts us off.
The international community has once again condemned North Korea for its recent test firing of an intercontinental ballistic missile. South Korea and 9 member countries of the UN Security Council, including the US, released a joint statement on Tuesday to strongly call on the North to abandon its unlawful missile programs. The statement highlighted that the regime has violated the UNSC resolutions over 30 times this year alone, as it fired 5 ICBMs, over 25 other ballistic missiles, plus 3 satellite launches using ballistic missile technology. A UNSC meeting was also convened the same day where officials strongly criticized Pyongyang's escalating threats.
We have used every word to describe the DPRK's continued threats to international peace and security. Flagrant, unacceptable, reckless, egregious. All of these words still apply. But today, I offer another word: ridiculous.
Once again, this irresponsible launch endangered vessels, exposed aircraft in the surrounding area to great risk, and terrified Japanese citizens.
North Korea, however, attempted to shift the blame to South Korea and the US, claiming a legitimate right to self-defense.
The ICBM launch conducted by DPRK this time is a warning countermeasure in the face of the grave situation.
Tuesday's UNSC meeting, however, concluded without a concrete outcome amid opposition from China and Russia. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
A US B-1B strategic bomber was deployed over the skies of Jeju Island on Wednesday to take part in the trilateral aerial military exercise with South Korea and Japan. Seoul's Joint Chiefs of Staff said the joint exercise took place as a show of force against North Korea's recent intercontinental ballistic missile launch. This is the 13th deployment of a U.S. strategic bomber to the Korean peninsula this year, and the second joint air exercise between Seoul, Washington, and Tokyo. And amid North Korea's increased provocations, including an ICBM launch, President Yoon has called for the nation's military to speed up acquiring new weapons, as deploying outdated ones is just wasting money. The comments came as he opened the third meeting of the Defense Innovation Committee on Wednesday. The members discussed and presented ways to shorten the current average of 14 years to deploy new arms to 7. President Yoon also showed his gratitude for the successful launching of South Korea's first military satellite. In the meantime, Yoon also added that with a nuclear consultative group with the U.S., South Korea's role in its own defense has grown. South Korea and Japan will resume their high-level economic talks tomorrow here in Seoul, which have not been held for 8 years due to strained relations. Their talks could include key supply chain issues. For the first time in 8 years, the foreign ministries of South Korea and Japan have decided to resume high-level economic talks. The talks will take place in Seoul on Thursday, led by South Korea's Deputy Foreign Minister for Economic Affairs, Kang Jae-kwon, and Japan's Senior Deputy Foreign Minister, Keiichi Ono. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs said Wednesday that the two sides will assess their bilateral economic cooperation and discuss issues of mutual concern, including cooperation and economic security policies and regional and multilateral cooperation. The two sides are likely to discuss issues on economic security such as supply chain and technology cooperation. Eyes are on whether the issue of South Korea's import ban on Japanese seafood originating from Fukushima or Korean wartime forced labor victims' lawsuit filed against Japanese companies will be on the agenda. This is the 15th time that the two countries are holding the economic dialogue after it was first launched in 1999 to discuss comprehensive economic cooperation. It was last held in January 2016 in Tokyo. In late 2016, the Japanese government postponed the meeting when a statue of a girl symbolizing Korean victims of Japan's wartime sexual slavery was built in front of the Japanese consulate in South Korea's port city of Busan. And the meeting remained suspended as bilateral relations between Seoul and Tokyo worsened over several issues stemming from Japan's colonial rule of Korea before and during World War II. Then in March this year, bilateral relations started to improve after South Korea announced a plan to compensate victims of Japan's wartime forced labor to resolve the issue following decades of disputes. The leaders of the two countries met in July and agreed to resume the high-level economic dialogue by the end of this year. The foreign ministry expressed hopes of further improvements in bilateral relations, saying the upcoming talks could become an opportunity for the two countries to move toward a future-oriented relationship. The United States Forces Korea has returned 5 military bases, including Camp Market, to South Korea. According to the government on Wednesday, the U.S. returned the rest of Camp Market, located in Incheon, as well as 4 other military sites to South Korea, with the land amounting to around 290,000 square meters. The return of Camp Market comes just 4 years after parts of it were returned in 2019, and Incheon Metropolitan Government plans to soon decide on how to develop and utilize the land. The Ministry of National Defense also said that South Korea and the United States will continue to discuss the environmental conditions of the returned bases. Over at the National Assembly, the ruling People Power Party and the main opposition Democratic Party lawmakers have finally reached an agreement on next year's budget. More funds will be allocated for the nation's R&D projects, which had been one of the contending issues. Our Kim Jung-sil has the details.
The Budget Committee, consisting of 2 lawmakers, each from the ruling PPP and main opposition DP, finally reached a deal. More than 3 weeks past the legal deadline for next year's budget to be rubber-stamped, the lawmakers, joined by Finance Minister Chu Kyung-ho, smiled and held hands.
We reached an agreement today with a bit of give and take with each other because we couldn't delay any longer when taking people's livelihoods and the country's economy into consideration.
Of course, some of the agreement falls short of our expectations, but I think it's meaningful that both parties reached an agreement based on the best possible negotiations.
The government has accepted budget restorations or increases in key fields proposed by the DP. For R&D, there is a net increase of 600 billion won, or about $460 million. The amount is less than half of what DP had asked for, but is considered a huge gain as the government originally proposed a cutback of 5.2 trillion won, or about $4 billion. For the Saemangam Regional Development Project, which the government originally considered cutting back on, there's an agreed increase of 300 billion won, or about $230 million. Saemangam is one of South Korea's large-scale reclamation projects. There were high expectations to use the reclaimed land for renewable energy, such as wind power plants or solar power panels. The total budget cut the government proposed for local vouchers was also increased marginally by 300 billion Korean won. The vouchers allow local residents to purchase vouchers to use instead of a credit card or cash, with a discount rate varying from around 5 to 10%. Both parties have been racing to reach a deal after they launched a budget committee earlier this month. The agreed bill will be put to a vote on Thursday morning at the regular plenary session. Kim Jung-sil, Arirang News.
The number of South Koreans who took parental, maternity, and paternity leave in 2022 increased by its largest margin in 11 years. According to Statistics Korea on Wednesday, the figure jumped 14.2% year-on-year to around 200,000 workers. This was due to new policies implemented last year that support those on parental leave and decreases in telecommuting after COVID-19 measures were lifted. The number of men taking paternity leave also rose by around 28% on year to over 50,000, the largest since 2010 when data was first compiled. Amid mounting pressure, Israel says it's willing to agree to another pause in its war with Hamas in Gaza in exchange for the release of more hostages held by the Palestinian militant group. Hamas leader is set to travel to Egypt for ceasefire talks. Our Chung Eun-ju has the latest.
Israel has issued a proposal to Hamas that includes a week-long pause in fighting in exchange for the release of 40 hostages. First reported by Axios, the proposal looks to release hostages that include women, the elderly, and those in need of urgent care. CNN reported that the deal is being presented to Hamas through Qatari mediators. Speaking to a gathering of ambassadors on Tuesday, Israeli President Isaac Herzog said Israel is ready for another humanitarian pause and additional humanitarian aid in order to enable the release of hostages. The previous 7-day temporary ceasefire last month led to the release of 86 women and children held by Hamas in exchange for 240 Palestinian women and teenagers held in Israeli jails. Hamas also released 24 foreign nationals during that period. Meanwhile, Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh is expected to visit Egypt on Wednesday to hold ceasefire talks, raising hopes of another temporary pause to fighting in Gaza. A senior Hamas official also said on Monday that it rejected holding negotiations over exchanging prisoners while the war was ongoing, but was open to any initiative to end the war. The Israeli military's continuing airstrikes and ground offensives in Gaza have resulted in thousands of civilian deaths. And that has led to growing international condemnation, including from traditional allies. The United States has also called on Israel to scale back its attacks to target only Hamas. As diplomatic efforts continue, the humanitarian crisis in the besieged Strip worsens with each day. Nearly 20,000 people have been killed by Israeli military action in Gaza since October 7th, and more than 52,000 wounded, according to the Hamas-controlled Ministry of Health. Much of northern Gaza has been decimated by airstrikes and, according to the United Nations, almost 1.9 million people, more than 80% of the enclave's population, have been displaced. Chung Eun-ju, Arirang News.
Elsewhere, Russia's Vladimir Putin has pledged to maintain his military offensive against Ukraine in the new year. Our Yoon covers his comments.
Russian President Vladimir Putin spoke at a defense leadership meeting in Moscow on Tuesday, during which he stressed that Russia will not give up what he called its territory, adding that Moscow will not abandon the goals of its special military operation.
The West is not abandoning its strategy of containing Russia and its aggressive goals in Ukraine. Well, we are not going to give up our goals for a special military operation.
He said Russia had taken on 490,000 contract and voluntary soldiers in 2023, adding that next year, Russia will try to boost those forces to 745,000 men. During his meeting with the Defense Ministry, Putin said if Western countries or Ukraine want to hold talks with Russia, he's ready to do so, but it would be on Russia's terms.
History will put everything in its place. We won't interfere, but we won't give up our territory. This is what everyone in Ukraine, Europe and the USA, everyone who is aggressive towards Russia should understand. If they want to negotiate, let them negotiate. We will only do it based on our interests.
Putin also reiterated that Ukraine's accession to NATO, even if it's 10 or 15 years from now, is unacceptable. Meanwhile, at an end-of-year news conference on Tuesday, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said that he was confident his country would continue to receive important financial support from the US and the EU.
As for financial assistance, we are working very hard on it. I'm sure that the United States of America will not betray us, and that what we have achieved with the United States will be fulfilled.
He added that no one knows when the war in Ukraine will end, but the moment could be brought closer if everything necessary for victory is done. Russia annexed Crimea in 2014, and in 2022 claimed the 4 additional regions of Ukraine that its troops partially control are part of Russia. Kyiv says it will not rest until every last Russian soldier is ejected from Ukraine. Yoon, Arirang News.
Iceland's Reykjanes Peninsula exploded with volcanic eruptions on Monday night, its fourth in fewer than 3 years. This prompted evacuation orders for nearby towns and road closures. Our An Sung-jit reports.
A volcano in the southwestern part of Iceland erupted on Monday evening. The eruption on the Reykjanes Peninsula released bursts of glowing lava onto the landscape and huge plumes of smoke more than 100 meters into the sky. This comes after weeks of seismic activity since the underground magma chamber formed in November.
Did the eruption come as a surprise? Yes and no is the answer. So yes, because we did not expect it will start tonight. Yeah. No, because we have seen precursors since many weeks, actually since October.
This prompted an evacuation order for the nearby town of Grindavik with slightly over 3,000 residents. The Icelandic government has said the eruption does not pose a threat to life, but has warned people to stay out of the area as gas emitted from it can be dangerous. Nearby roads are closed to all traffic except emergency teams. However, international flight corridors remain open, though some flight schedules to and from Iceland were delayed. Though hundreds of cubic meters of lava were being released every second in the first 2 hours of the eruption, the intensity soon diminished by early Tuesday with lava spreading laterally. An expert provided an insight on how long this eruption would last.
It is impossible right now to establish how long it is going to be the eruption. But comparing with the previous history of Icelandic eruption, realistically, it's going to last no more than a few months.
Iceland sits on a tectonic plate boundary which makes it a volcanic hotspot in the North Atlantic. It is home to 32 active volcanoes. The most disruptive in recent times was a 2010 eruption of Eyjafjallajökull volcano, which led to huge ash clouds from glacial ice that led to widespread airspace closures over Europe and the Atlantic. Experts say that this most recent volcanic eruption won't cause the same level of chaos as seen in 2010. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
K-pop sensation BTS will be sharing insights into their 10-year journey to becoming global superstars in a new 8-part docuseries. The group's agency Big Hit Music says 2 episodes of the group's documentary, BTS Monuments Beyond the Star, will drop every Wednesday, starting today until January 10 on Disney+. The new docuseries will delve into key moments in the group's career, such as when BTS was formed, its huge global success, and the members' solo projects. Fans will also be able to watch never-before-seen interviews and behind-the-scenes moments with all 7 members talking about both their personal and professional lives. This year marks the 70th anniversary of the Korean War armistice. On this occasion, a special exhibition close to the DMZ acknowledges the current circumstances while sharing a hopeful vision for reunification. Our Yoon brings more.
The Odusan Unification Tower stands just a few miles between the military demarcation line between South and North Korea. Here, a special exhibition is being held to mark the 70th anniversary of the Korean War armistice. Called Division the Vision, and under the theme, The Vision of Unity, it's a collaboration between Gallery Pagyong and the National Institute for Unification Education.
The artists in this exhibition all live or work near the border. Living so close to North Korea, each artist reflected the unfortunate reality of being unable to visit. Including myself, it's not easy to remember the reality of division and express our longing for peace in our everyday lives. But I hope this exhibition can inform people about the realities of our division and convey hope of unification in the future.
The exhibition presents a special collection of artworks by 6 artists: Lee Dong-chun, Kim Si-hyun, Kim Won-gun, Bae Su-young, Oh Jae-woo, and Chun So-young. They portrayed the current state of the divided Korean peninsula from their perspectives through various mediums such as paintings, sculptures, photography, installations, and videos. Artist Bae Su-young presents Peaceful Melody Garden, seeking to establish a connection that goes beyond the physical boundaries of the demilitarized zone.
During the Korean War, the DMZ was a fiercely contested area. Countless landmines and explosives remain buried in the ground here. Ironically, these metal remnants coexist with wildlife and plants as the area has been preserved and untouched by human interference. The aim was to fill the space with a peaceful melody symbolizing our collective hope to overcome the challenges we face and embrace a brighter world. I wish for these hopes to spread and to console the souls who have lost family members due to the division. Below, there are warhead containers used to store missiles. They represent represent the past, present, and the future in their true essence.
The exhibition also hopes to dispel long-held biases and misunderstandings that have built up between North and South Korea. Yoon, Arirang News.
As of 2019, Korea has in operation a special team of experts assigned with the task of thwarting technology theft. Our Song Yujin covers their contributions.
Advanced semiconductor technology was about to be leaked to China. 3 domestic companies were involved, and even the smallest among them could have suffered losses exceeding 100 billion won, or roughly $75.8 million. Damages could have escalated exponentially if the crime had gone unnoticed, as company employees were involved.
Pictures were taken using a mobile phone and presentation materials were created and delivered to Chinese companies.
The agency that prevented the theft was the Korean Intellectual Property Office's Technology and Design Police Division. Formed in March 2019, the division is comprised of examiners who worked in patent examination at the KIPO. With diverse experts, including doctorates, lawyers, and forensic specialists, and by incorporating police investigative techniques, it can prevent significant crimes.
We accurately determine which technology has been infringed. Then we employ police investigative techniques starting from covert operations, suspect interrogations, informant interviews, on-site inspections.
As the effectiveness of the technology police in detecting theft increases, related support is also expanding. Penalties for technology theft, often considered lenient, are being strengthened. An industrial property dispute resolution support center will be established to mediate disputes between companies and, if necessary, involve the KIPO division. With the establishment of the Joint Response Team for Technology Leakage, there are plans to also actively respond to international disputes.
With global technological competition intensifying, stealing technology is much faster than developing it. That's why international issues of technology theft are widely discussed.
In the past 5 years, 93 cases of industrial technology leakage overseas have caused estimated damage of 25 trillion Korean won, or roughly $18.9 billion. 송유진, Arirang News.
The sub-zero cold continued all day as the second Arctic cold spell heads south. Morning temperatures in Seoul tomorrow will plunge to -15 degrees Celsius, bringing the strongest cold wave this winter. Please prepare thoroughly for the cold. With freezing cold weather, heavy snow alerts are in effect on the west coast, Jeju Island, Ulleungdo Island, and Dokdo Island. As for the amount of snow, more than 70 centimeters of snow are expected in mountainous areas of Jeju Island and more than 50 in western parts of the Jeollado provinces by the day after tomorrow. The west coast of Chungcheongnam-do province will also receive more than 20 centimeters. Snow on the west coast will continue until the day after tomorrow, and Jeju Island will continue to have snow until this weekend. Tomorrow's Seoul will start off at -15 degrees, the coldest morning of this winter. Highs in Seoul will jump to -7, Gwangju and Gyeongju -3 degrees. This cold spell will loosen up from the weekend ahead of Christmas Day. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world. That brings an end to this edition of Newscast. Thank you for watching. We'll be back at 10 p.m. with the AI Headline News. Good night.